Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi, at this point a former exotic dancer, digital content creator, and many other things. I am presenting to you this week a bonus episode. So last month, in August actually, I was asked to be a part of the Sugar and Spice Festival in Singapore, which centers around sex work, sex education, and all those wonderful things that we don't necessarily get to talk about. And as you may have heard of in the season 2 opener, Singapore is quite conservative. So it was really interesting speaking to this audience, and not only limited to those who reside in Singapore, but also those mostly in Asia. That's what their demographic was. So this is my first, this wasn't intentional, but this is the first kind of long form podcast episode that I've done with a few of my past guests, as well as some of my upcoming guests in future episodes. So we have Naomi, who was on season 1. We have Jolene Salonga, aka Pocket Phoenix, who is in a few of my episodes as well. We also have Joyen Santos from the Philippines, who will be on next week's episode, and Salome from the Philippines as well, who's going to be on the show, I think at the end of the month or in November. So this is really cool because this is an all Filipino and all female panel that we got to speak on. And we were speaking on being the token Asian, contrasting the differences in terms of sex work and how we're treated, how it's looked at in both a North American context versus an Asian context. So Salome and Joyen, they're actually based in the Philippines, and Naomi, Jolene, and myself are obviously based here in North America in the wonderful West Coast in Vancouver. So things are done a little bit differently here and there, and it's really, really interesting to see and hear the differing experiences that we all shared in the realm of sex work. So bear with me. I was recording at 1 o'clock in the morning till about 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to meet the 4 p.m. Singapore time. It was my first time moderating the panel, and I am extremely honored that they had asked me to do this and be a part of this wonderful organization and festival. Can't wait to do it again. Thank you so much, Martha Lee, who is the organizer of Sugar and Spice. Thank you again. It's a huge, huge, huge honor. And to Joyen Santos, who is the one who nominated me to be a part of the festival. Thank you. And don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe. Write a pretty little review for me on Apple Podcasts. I would very, very much appreciate that. And if you have any questions, it's Strip by Sia on Instagram or my personal Sia Steph. And again, new episodes every single Sunday. We'll catch you guys next week. Enjoy the bonus episode.
Set up. Thanks for joining us. Sorry, a couple minutes late here, but welcome to the Token Asian. We're talking race and sex work today. I am Steph Sia, aka Kimchi, aka your moderator today, aka host of the podcast Strip by Sia up here in Canada. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here. It's way past my bedtime, Jolene's bedtime, Naomi's bedtime. But we're up because we want to talk to you about this really important topic in Asian culture. So, this is the Sugar and Spice Sex Festival. Thank you again, Martha. Thank you again to all the organizers for putting on this really important conference. It's sex is something that is considered as taboo, is considered maybe full of shame, something that we don't necessarily talk about or are not comfortable talking about in Asian culture. So we're going to be dissecting that in the lens of specifically Filipino culture, and also within sex work within Canada, also sex work in the Philippines as well, how to navigate around that. So really comparing and contrasting North American standards, Filipino standards, how our race and our upbringing, our values, our history, colonialism, all of that, how that impacts our sex work. And I am not alone doing this, and thank God I'm not alone doing this because this is scary and I can't talk for that long. But joining me on the panel today, we have Jolene Salonga, who is from Canada, born in the Philippines here. She is a digital creator. She is a stripper. She is a sugar baby, new escort. Am I missing anything?
No,
No.
yeah.
We could definitely get into that. But we have Jolene Salonga joining us. We also have Naomi Weiss also joining us from Canada as well. She is also a stripper, a vocalist, a very talented artist, movement, Pilates instructor. Lots of titles here as well. And then we also have our newest addition, actually, Salome Salvi, all the way from the Philippines. Hello. Again, hi. Another fellow sex worker as well. Mainly, I want to say, mainly with the OnlyFans, digital content creation, videos, clips for sale, many vids, avian stars, stuff like that. So we're going to get into it. Who wants to start with an introduction first? I guess maybe we want to go in order, just so we can get a bit of an introduction in your own words, on your own terms. Jolene, did you want to start?
Okay. So the gateway drug for me to sex work is actually burlesque. So I started in the burlesque community. I've been doing it for many years. And then I transitioned to becoming a stripper. So I've been a stripper for 2 years now. And then like before the pandemic kicked in, I actually was getting mentored by one of the high-end companion, like the escorts here in Vancouver, Canada. And then the pandemic kicked in, so that took a hold. And I decided I did a digital content creation. So I'm also on ManyVids, OnlyFans, all the all the online, Pornhub. So I mean all the places. And then after the pandemic, I continued my mentorship with my escort mentor, and so it's just last month that I started becoming a high-end companion. And also, actually, in March I was also not really sugar. I guess sugar babying. Yeah, just because
You were.
I was. Yeah, more like tricks, So I had like super fans from the strip club who wanted to hang out with me, and I'm like, well, so yeah.
Awesome. Naomi, did you want to go next? Do you want to tell the audience a bit about yourself, your background, your history, everything, whatever you want to tell?
Sure, here goes. I am Naomi Weiss. I am a Filipino-Canadian. I was born in Canada. I was raised here for my whole life. I live in Vancouver now. I started stripping in 2015. After I went to music school, I was like, I need a job. Like, what do I do? What do I like to do? So I like to dance, so I decided to be a stripper. And then through stripping, I've dabbled in other various forms of sex work. And it's also kind of allowed me to have, more of an opportunity to explore my artistic practice. Right now in the pandemic, I'm mostly teaching movement and Pilates and, different type of fitness. But if it wasn't for stripping and sex work, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Also, I just feel like I didn't really know what I signed up for when I was starting in stripping. I was like, okay, I'll just do this for money. But I ended up learning so much about how to relate to people, and it's been really cool and interesting. So I'm really proud to be a sex worker. I'm proud of everything that it's given me, I guess.
Yay.
Yay. So that's me.
That's a wonderful introduction. He said it way better than I could have done. So. And last but not least, Salome Salvi, all the way from Philippines. Please tell the audience who you are, your bundle of joy, bundle of energy. Please, go ahead.
Hi, hello.
So my name is Salome. I started I guess like my journey with sex work started when I first discovered that I was an exhibitionist, because I started posting nudes on Twitter initially for free.
No.
For free for 2 years. I did that. I was on Twitter just posting nudes for fun for 2 years, and then that's how I discovered that I really like modeling. So I branched out into nude modeling for print and for amateur photographers. But I moved. I guess I've been doing it professionally for a few months since I moved into OnlyFans. So that's where I moved my practice. So before sex work, I work usually as a copywriter and as a social media manager for different companies. So I was able to really marry that with my modeling and with my sex work when I moved into platforms like OnlyFans and Is My Girl and many vids, which is where you can see my work. So my username is the same on all platforms. It's Salome Salvi. So yeah, that's my history as a sex worker, I guess.
Awesome.
I've also done a bit of escorting on the side, but that wasn't very successful for me because like my domain really is online and being a virtual sex worker. And selling content. So that's my forte.
Very cool. Short and sweet. Thank you for the intro there. And I guess if you guys were curious about who I am, who the hell are you? Basically, I'm also a sex worker as well. So again, my name's Steph Sia, aka Kimchi, Sia Steph on Instagram, and also Script by Sia on Instagram. My podcast is about sex workers. Also, I am a sex worker as well. So my journey, I started off as a sugar baby. And of course, not really knowing what I was getting myself into, not knowing the difference between salt daddies and splendid daddies and fake daddies out there, not sure how to navigate that. It's real. Even to this day, it's real. So it's been really interesting. But then I started pole dancing for sports, but also to get in touch with my sensual side. And then also kind of realized I was an exhibitionist as well. And started stripping because I was doing some pole dancing competitions and I really didn't have any stage presence. And I was like, I'm just going to do a couple amateur nights. And then I realized I really like getting naked in front of everyone. So started my stripping journey. And then I guess now doing OnlyFans. I've done my free cams as well. I've done a lot of different sex work and I really enjoy it. And I also really enjoy educating people and trying to destigmatize the industry, which is what my podcast is about. I usually interview many different types of sex workers, many different gender identities, BIPOC, you name it. Everyone's on my podcast. Everyone on this panel is and will be on the podcast. Salome, I'm looking at you. So that's just a little about me, but I'm not going to make this panel about me at all. I really want for us to go in deep with the conversation of sex work within the Asian lens, what that looks like, how that differs, but it's always rooted in something. So we're going to start off in the beginning of time with the Filipino roots. So I myself am born in Canada, so there's a big history of colonialism in the Philippines. Of course, as you know, colonized by the Spaniards. Lots of different themes here with whiteness, also different layers in terms of religion, like Christianity, Catholicism, lots of conversations and avenues about that. Feel like in terms of those who are born in the Philippines, Jolene, Salome, did you guys want to kind of go into that? It's a much different approach than us born in Canada. So who wants to take it off?
Okay, I can start. When I was in the Philippines, I actually went to a French non-ran convent school, Assumption. I don't know if Joyen, it rings a bell. I'm Assumptionista. So I remembered when we were learning the history of the Philippines, how like there was just a lot of like is it the right word, like patronizing patronizing whiteness, and then there's just like patronizing whiteness, patronizing Catholicism, and then those who are in like the Muslim and pagan beliefs were kind of villainized in the historical context, or they were never acknowledged at all. Like I think the only person who got acknowledged in the history who was pagan was Lapu-Lapu, and he's the only one out of the Catholic context that was recognized. Um, yeah, and then oh my god, it's like I'm trying to get my brains out right now, you guys. I'm like
Going down memory lane.
No. Yeah, and I remembered learning Jose Rizal, you know, like that novel. Um
Which is where my name comes from, actually.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm trying to remember Jose Rizal, like El Filibusterismo and Noli Me Tangere.
No limit on it.
Like dissecting that, and like how I know Jose Rizal has a reputation of also trying to call out the BS of, you know,
Yeah, the hypocrisy.
the hypocrisy of like the colonizers. You know, the brainwashing, and then the you know, there's like the character Maria Clara, so everyone was expected to be that certain, like even like I don't know if it's like in general how the Spaniards did it, but then we were expected to be a Maria Clara, where we're supposed to be this prim, proper, good girls, you know, fully
Yeah.
clothed, nice, you know, like, you know, constantly serving like the man and, you know, the priest, and I don't know.
Right.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot there. Salome, do you have something to add there as well?
Yeah, like there's a lot to unpack, because I like, this is a very broad stroke, but before we were colonized by the Spaniards, and then by the Americans, and then by the Japanese afterwards, and we were actually also colonized by the British for like 5 years. So we have a history as a country of being passed from one colonial power to another. And before all of that happened, our society was structured very differently, and that we were actually, that equality between the sexes is recognized. And when the Spaniards like came in and brought in the influences of the Catholic Church, where, you know, like where the ideas about marriage and work and, you know, raising a family is very patriarchal, like our society changed with that as well. Like we used to have women in positions of power in you know, in our society when we were subscribing to the native ideal. But so you know, like women were high priestesses. We were we were social political leaders before the Spaniards came, and then, you know, when they brought in the, you know, that Catholic Christian influence, that kind of got eradicated and, you know, got replaced with a very Western, patriarchal kind of structure. So, and that definitely continued like with the other colonizers that we got. You know, we were sold off to the Americans soon before World War II, and so yeah, that's I feel like that's where a lot of the colorist and a lot of sexist ideals that we still have in the Philippines, that's where it all comes from. So yeah, so those are the things that we grapple with right now as sex workers, as women.
That's a lot.
It's rough.
We're diving right in.
It's very depressing.
How does that affect your perspective growing up, and even in your work today?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the colonialism, all the things that are related to that, as you mentioned, colorism, classism.
patriarchy.
Yeah, like Jolene and like Joyen. I was actually like from a all girls Catholic school run by nuns. It's very
Oh, that's
So,
a thing.
it's a thing. Like those
Wow.
like girls from those schools grow up to be like the horniest, like honestly. Like, because of the repression. So that has shaped my like initial ideas about sex and about sex work. You know, like I used to think that I would never be that kind of girl. You know, like because I'm smart, I'm gonna be in a respectable job, and I'm not gonna be like the popular girls, like stuff like that. Like it's gonna make you grow up with that kind of mindset, and with the colorism as well. Like especially like I know that all of the girls here who grew up in the Philippines would say that, you know, like we are kind of taught from a very early age to hate our skin because we were taught that the only thing that's desirable is that if you're a chinita, which is, you know, like if you're East Asian and you have fair skin, or if you're mestiza, which is, you know, like if you have like Caucasian features. So, and you know, that is reflected everywhere, like in media. So it's very oppressive. So, you know, like I have a lot of bones to pick. I have a lot of chips on my shoulder with that kind of stuff. So
Totally.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. I was seeing some of the comments there. the papaya soap. Even I know that.
I laughed at that when I saw the Likas papayas. I'm like, oh my god!
Yeah, like
True story.
Wow.
they're so triggering to me. I used to like. Do you guys know Maxi Peel?
What's that?
It's this
that?
whitening astringent that makes your skin peel off, and then when it peels off, it's whiter.
Oh my
It's really
god.
painful, but it's like
It's like a
so
chemical peel.
popular in the Philippines. And I
Oh
used
my
to put that
gosh.
all over my body as a kid, and I'm like, girl, baby, like,
Oh my god.
I don't know if I did the Maxi Peel. Maybe it was Maxi Peel it's called, but I remember going to the dermatologist as a kid and then like getting whatever the bleaching thing that hurts like a motherfucker.
Oh wow.
And then I would just I have to stay in the air conditioning for like 5 minutes because I'm like, oh, I'm burning, but yeah, I'm gonna be white. You know, because you have to like leave it in overnight or something. I don't. And you're like literally shedding like a skin, like a snake.
Yeah, like that's
Oh
what
my
Maxi Peel
God.
does.
It's so bad.
So just like, well, if you guys are listening and you're like, what the hell are you guys talking about? The papaya soaps and all these peels and stuff like that is to make your skin whiter. And that is seen as like your higher class. You know, you're not working in the fields. You're not beneath them. And I feel like that whole colorism kind of concept or that lens still exists to this day. I know you guys were making comments earlier too in terms of a lot of the role models, a lot of the well-known and very famous actors and actresses in the Philippines are white or half white or westernized in some way. Like, yeah, so I would say it still kind of rings true. Like, do you say that? Would you agree, or maybe you don't agree, that that's also playing a role in sex work too with colorism, or maybe not?
I think so. But you guys go first. I've been talking too much.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, I remembered when I was in the Philippines, I was bleaching my skin, but now here I'm actually going to the tanning salon. To accentuate my olive skin, because yeah, again, I think with colorism, like the colorism here is opposite. Like, you know, my clientele prefers like they like my olive skin, and you know, so
people pay to get tans like us, right?
Completely
different.
So bad that I feel so bad that I realized that so late that my skin color is coveted, you know, in other parts of the world. But you know, you won't feel that here at all.
No, and why don't we switch the flip here? So let's talk about in terms of Canada. So both myself and Naomi grew up in Canada. How do you think our upbringings were here as Filipinos? Because it's different.
It's so different. Oh my gosh. But I feel like I have a really, like, I can't speak for you or anybody else, but for me, like, I just grew up so far removed from the Filipino culture. Like, I don't speak Tagalog. I don't, like, cook Filipino foods. I, like, have, like, somehow, like, a Valley Girl accent. And it's really weird because I don't know, it's unique because as far as like colorism and like classism in the Philippines, like my family, especially my mom's side, like they are like from Manila. Like my mom went to Marinol. Her dad was in the army. He really believed that everyone should like speak English. So she grew up speaking English, and then I have like Spanish ancestry and like British ancestry too. So like I'm in this weird like in between. I don't know. I pretty much like was born in Canada, speak English, and is like very westernized. But the only time that I like remember that I'm not the only time, but you know, it's like I didn't really realize what the implications were for being Filipino until people started like treating me different in sex work and being like, oh, you're Asian, like you must be so submissive, and like I love Filipinos because they love to cook, etc., etc. But
right, that
like,
stereotype.
I want to talk about
like,
that later.
Yeah,
we can definitely talk about that stereotype.
But like as far as like colorism goes, I feel like, I don't know, I can kind of go between kind of like white looking, and I used to have like blonde hair, like Marilyn Monroe thing going on. I feel like I made like people liked that. Like that was well received. So I feel like it can either go like that direction, or I can go in like the, oh, like exotic Asian direction. Just like capitalize on people fetishizing me. But I don't really tend to do that.
But do you think that's really interesting that how you brought that up though? Like, do you think by playing both sides you have a leg up or an advantage somehow in terms of sex work?
I just can't, like, I just can't, like, I don't know. I used to really try to, like, school, like, strip club patrons, and then they'd be like, what's your ethnicity? And I'd be like, you have to go for dance if you want me to tell you, because it's not important, like, I'm a person. But now I just say, like, oh, I'm Filipino. And sometimes they like it, and they're like, oh, wow. But I don't really even like to, like, capitalize on it. I probably could. I probably I feel like I definitely have the option to and be like, oh yeah, but I'd rather just like be myself. Like I don't have that much of a persona difference from when I'm working and when I'm not working. And it's not like I grew up in the Philippines anyway. Like I grew up in Victoria, so
which is pretty white.
Like I'm still very, very proud of like my roots and my heritage. So I just don't do it. So I can't really answer the question.
That's okay. I just like to put you on the hot spot. But actually I want to put you on the hot spot again. So
oh my gosh.
In terms of since you grew up in Canada and you grew up in Victoria, BC, which is pretty white, but also growing up as a Filipino, but not having any Asian role models and stuff too. I know you were mentioning in the notes, in our own show notes here, in terms of like adopting Black culture as a first generation Filipino Canadian, because there weren't any Filipinx role models available, or even Asians. Did you want to kind of elaborate or touch on that really briefly?
Yeah, I really do. I feel like, I don't know, growing up in the Filipino community, like the music that the Filipino community like listened to, like my Filipino Catholic youth group was hip hop. Like
Yes.
they listened, that was like in the early 2000s era of like 50 Cent and like
Yes.
Chingy and like Jay Quan and like that era. That was like that was a pretty fun like era to grow up in. We wore like Fat Farm shoes with like the velcroed to itself, and like apple bottom apparel and stuff like that. Like it was pretty fun, and I didn't really like understand what like culturally was going on, but I think it was, I don't know, like people, like you see in the mainstream media, like Black artists and people with darker skin who are also marginalized and going through their own type of oppression, and then having no Asian like super popular mainstream artists. I think that we were kind of just like drawn to Black culture, and it ended up like really influencing my stripping, and like I pretty much only dance to Black music now, and I didn't really, it's not like I never thought about it, but I've just been thinking about it more, like with the whole Black Lives Matter movement coming out, like just how much Black culture has ended up influencing me. So
Absolutely.
that's
I think even in the Philippines, that's kind of prevalent. That we are influenced by Black culture. I think, like for example, like even amongst like people my age, like they kind of feel a little bit too comfortable saying the N-word, and they don't like, you know, like you have to explain to them that it's not right. And I think that we as a colored people, like we feel a lot of solidarity with that struggle, even though like it's not the same. And I don't, encourage people who aren't Black to use the N-word, but I understand why a lot of Filipinos would like feel that kind of affiliation with Black culture, because we were also like an American colony, and we did feel that oppression too, like on our own land. So, like that's something that I understand. Like,
I totally get it.
Some people say, oh, Filipinos are the Black people of Asia and stuff like that. Like, I don't really know what that means.
Because when you go here to when you come here to the Philippines and you go on the street, like our like the fashion of the masses, like is very influenced by hip hop and Black culture. Like just like rappers and hip hoppers and gangsters everywhere. Like when you come here, and it's kind of something that we appropriated for ourselves, which I am not sure. Like I'm kind of ambivalent about, but it's happening. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think it's so important to have that acknowledgement, especially in how sensitive things are in its current climate, and also in light of the whole Black Lives Matter movement as well. So thank you, Naomi, for bringing that up. Super, super, super important to have that discussion. But I did want to kind of pivot a little bit too, in terms of talking about something you guys mentioned earlier, in terms of fetishization. It's such a sticky topic. I don't even know where to begin. Who wants to start on fetishization? It's such a broad topic. / infuriating / beneficial. I mean, who wants to start?
I don't know. I think I kind of already said, like, I just don't choose to play into it because I just can't. Like, I don't know. It just takes up too much, like, emotional labor to be like, oh, yeah, like, I'll cook you pants. Like, I just won't do that. Just don't see it happening. So, but I would never, like, I don't know, maybe I do and I don't know it, but I don't think, whatever. Like, I don't argue with people if they're like, oh, wow, like, I really love Filipino women. I'm like, okay, cool, let's go for a dance. But I don't really, like, play into it. But I don't judge anyone who does, because I'm just like, yeah, like, get that money. Like, do it.
I mean, there is just such a fine line between fetishization, you know, like, and how Asians are perceived in the foreign market.
For sure.
For example, yeah, like, for example, as you said, with the whole stereotype of Asian women, we're typically seen as submissive, and especially, like, in terms of Filipino women, very hardworking. You know, we won't answer back. We're all nurses or
very
something.
accommodating.
Yeah, like, it's kind of infuriating a little bit that we're only seen as that. Who wants to elaborate a little bit more on this topic?
I do have some experience with that. Like, because I also do like one-on-one video calls with customers and clients, and usually and I get a lot of comments or speech about like, oh, you're like, I really love your Asian pussy because it's so tiny, and I love that you're so small, and I love that you're so cute, and stuff like that. And I feel like it kind of like erases or takes for granted my agency as a person. But it's, I don't know, like I'm still, it's something that I'm still grappling with, because I am a submissive, I am a switch actually, but I have more experience as a submissive when it comes to kink. So so it can be argued that, like, why am I playing into that stereotype? So why am I playing into that stereotype as a submissive Asian woman, you know? But to me, that kind of like stereotype, or that kind of like fetishization, or that kind of profiling has been ingrained in me so much, and I've been exposed to it so much that it has legitimately become part of my identity, and it has become something that I've chosen for myself. So there is a very fine line between, you know, like, yeah. You know,
but like
it's become part of my identity. So I would get a lot of arguments that, you know, like, it's kind of like anti-feminist that you're leaning into that because you're submissive. And I'm like, but it's already part of my identity, you know, like, how do I erase that for the sake of political correctness, you know? So it's hard. It's hard to grapple with sometimes.
Oh, definitely.
May I add with the grappling?
Yes.
Because you said the magic F word, and I thought I should come in.
Come in. It's Joyen speaking.
Come on in, Joyen.
Let's come on in, enjoy the fun, right? I guess in line with fetishization, I think that there's a good and a bad side with it, as with, you know, a lot of things in our line of work. We do know the bad things. We're very familiar with the bad things of fetishization. But I find that as a dominatrix, I use race play, or fetishizing race as a fetishization as a form to educate. It could be a form to educate, like, for example, and to explore that taboo topic with my partners, you know, because it's something that is so sensitive that no one feels comfortable talking about it unless you put them in a kink setting and you fix the setup. You fix the setup in such a way that it's consensual. Yeah, sure. Fetishize me as your Asian dragon dominatrix, and I will do the same to you as my white colonizer. I'm gonna colonize you this time. You know, so there's a bit of educating in the process and exploring with that, learning more about that taboo topic. Okay, in a safe space. Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
That's a
it's
really good way of putting
really
it.
important that you are cognizant of you know, like the forces or the influences that made you what you are, that, you know, that shaped your identity as a sexual person. And, you know, like I think you just have to be aware that, you know, your preferences and your identity, that's not created in a vacuum. So you have to always be like cognizant of that, I feel.
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing, especially if you bring it to a playground like kink. Because a kink is essentially like a playground where you can act out your, you know, your fantasies, however. So.
Right.
So with me, I play along with the fetishization in the strip club. Just because I can't get rid of my accent, so it's obvious that I'm Filipino.
It is very cute.
Yeah, usually when guys
sexy
ask,
accent.
when they ask like, "What's your nationality?" Isn't it obvious with my accent? You know, and then like, well, you have to buy a dance and you might find out. You know? So I capitalize on it, but then when they step on like you know, guys who go to the strip club, they see you as an object sometimes, and so there were a couple times where, you know, when they find out I'm Filipino, I'm like, oh, you must be good at cleaning. I would love you to come over to my apartment and clean my place. And usually when that happens now, when I have like my stripper friends there, they're the ones who usually beat them up for me now. You know, they're like, what the fuck did you say to my friend? You better fucking say I'm sorry, or I'm gonna beat your dick. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna be like this submissive cute Asian, like, yeah, what she said. You know,
Playing into the role.
Oh my god.
Playing the role.
Domestic helper day.
But then, you know, I also have my moods. Probably when I have my period, I do tend to bring out my feisty side. So it's like I cannot be fucked, basically. So if you say something like that and I don't have any of my friends, I'm just like, stilettos on your dick. You know, so I'm like, what did you say? And then if they're feeling entitled and they don't apologize, that's when, you know. And yeah, so I'm like, I do play that cutesy, bubbly, submissive Asian role, but then when the guys, I think that's one thing I really like about working at the strip club is, you know, we have the power to, you know, tell the bouncers like he's an asshole or he didn't pay me kind of thing. Or usually what I end up doing is I end up just kicking their ass. Using my stilettos to wipe. I'm like, shh. Like, what did you say? Stab you. Don't mess with this cute little submissive looking Asian chick. Yeah.
So there's like a really, really fine line there. So I mean, I'm hearing that it's not okay. There's some people have to draw the line, and it's really up to your comfort level, I would say. But I mean, if you're going to be using it towards your benefit, if you could capitalize on it, why not? I'm okay with it personally. Playing the role to a certain extent until they piss me off or until it's not acceptable anymore. Like, I feel like everyone has their own personal boundaries, and
for sure,
it's okay. Yeah, totally. So, was there any other points you wanted to add to that whole topic?
I think what's important with I think like I think it's just really like important that you let that your boundaries are influenced, or your boundaries are influenced by the fact that, you know, you are aware of what the stereotype is, and you are aware about when it becomes harmful, and you are aware about where when it affects the person you're interacting with, when it affects their perception of other Filipinos. You know, you have to always be aware of that. So yeah, just don't forget that and you're good. Like, I feel.
Yeah, that was a really, really good talk point. And also thank you, Joyen, all the way from the Philippines. I didn't get to introduce you as well. She's in the audience today. Dominatrix, burlesque dancer extraordinaire. So be sure to peep her later. I also want to kind of move things over as well in terms of the contrast between sex work in North America and also sex work in Asia, and specifically the Philippines. So there's three of us here from Canada, and we're all from Vancouver, which is really, for the most part, liberal, or at least liberal facing. And we're all strippers. And I would say that we're pretty lucky on the West Coast here, just because, I mean, a reason I started the podcast was because a client of mine made a comment saying that, wow, strippers in Vancouver are like idolized. They are all influencers. The whole culture there is really cool. And I thought that statement said a lot, and also just made me realize how, generally speaking, how accepted it is, and kind of almost how trendy it is for us. I'm not sure if Salome, if you have the same experience, and I'm only specifically talking about stripping in this light, but I'm not sure how in the Philippines it is. I know there's a lot of restrictions there with even online sex work. I know there's a cyber sex law.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So, like, are you like asking about like how sex work is perceived here as opposed to how sex work is perceived over there? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
totally.
Like, I feel like as with all of the as with a lot of other things, I feel like the Philippines is a little bit behind with their understanding about the nature of sex work and how, you know, ethical it really is. Because
A little bit.
a little bit. I'm being nice. I'm baby. But like obviously, like it's very very stigmatized here. And I think like a big step in really understanding and really normalizing the existence of sex work is, you know, like separating sex work from trafficking, you know, because to a person who doesn't have a very good understanding of sex in general, they would always think that trafficking and sex work are one and the same. So like obviously that is the case here. That is the case for most of the world, I feel, but especially in countries like the Philippines, because so there's that, and obviously like if that is like if that is what is common knowledge here, like that gets adapted into law. So we have a lot of laws that conflate sex work and trafficking, like the cyber sex law, which you know, like viewing porn or making porn is not exploitation, or at least in most cases, because there are obviously like a lot of cases where like minors are coerced or people are coerced into making pornography. But you know, if it's made by an actual sex worker with an actual studio, you know, like that is obviously very consensual and that should be allowed. But what the cyber sex, what the target is, you know, the presence of minors on the internet making videos. But the cyber sex law bans fucking everything. Like PLDT, which is the biggest telco company in the Philippines, bans people from viewing Pornhub. Like if you type in Pornhub and you're using PLDT, it just says the site isn't there. So
Really?
So yeah, like so there's a lot of opportunities for sex workers that are not available here as opposed to, you know, like overseas. Like Chatterbait is not available here. My Free Camps is not available here. OnlyFans is not available here.
So I'm assuming you're not under PLDT.
What?
I'm assuming you're not under PLDT.
No.
Because
Awesome.
Salome has OnlyFans.
So many people are asking me about it, and I'm like, I can't tell you. It's confidential. But yeah, like it's because we have that law. And and you know, it's always the countries that have a really big trafficking problem. Like on My Free Camps and Chatterbait, only the Ukraine and the Philippines are banned. because we have a big trafficking problem. And I really believe that it's because of the conflation and because of the lack of understanding that sex work and trafficking is different. So yeah, there you go. That's my take on it.
That's huge. And of course, we're going to really dive into sex trafficking afterwards, but I really want to kind of still continue on the topic of the contrast here, but that's a huge censorship.
Yeah,
for you guys.
We have like, not even with just with sex work. Like we recently passed a law where you can be detained for 3 days if you were caught being a terrorist, which means that you spoke against the government. You can be tagged as a terrorist and you can be detained without a warrant for 3 days. That was passed like last month.
Yeah, that's new. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
That's the drunk terror bill, right?
Yeah, it's fucking awful, but
so crazy.
So you can imagine like the kind of like not victimization, the kind of like marginalization that sex workers face from the government.
Right. Yeah, because they're all lumped in. Totally. That's awful. I mean, and of course here in Canada, we also have, we're not without these shitty laws too. So, I mean, we also have, we got some shitty laws too that don't benefit sex workers, that don't protect sex workers either. So in Canada, we have Bill 36. We have a lot of restrictions. That is very, very similar to the USA's SOSTA FESTA, which again was, well, in my opinion, what I understand of it, was created to combat sex trafficking as well. But like in the Philippines, they lump together sex traffickers, the victims, with consenting sex workers and people that are creating their own content, their own stuff. But again, there's no discernment. There's nothing that can separate the two at all. So it's really tricky and also dangerous for a number of sex workers here in Canada as well. So it's
those kinds of laws like kind of prevent sex workers from forming a network with each other, because FOSTA and SESTA, for example, like what it does is that it prevents the talk of like any kind of talk about sex or about sex work. So on the entire platform. So like for example, on OnlyFans, you're not allowed to say the word meat or book or stuff like that. So if you prevent the use of that kind of speech, how are sex workers gonna talk to each other about their work? How are they gonna like communicate to each other what's dangerous and what's not dangerous to do? Like it just like eliminating that kind of speech from a platform just makes it dangerous for everyone. So that's what people fail to understand, because when they make these laws, they never take into account what sex workers actually want. They just make assumptions about the industry. So yeah. another chip on my shoulder. I'm sorry.
Getting you fired up in here.
They don't care what sex workers want, because that's not the point of these type of laws. The point of these type of laws is to abolish sex work, which is like literally the oldest profession. So like, good luck with that.
Yeah, because it's the only profession that you can do with just your body. So like, how are you going to abolish that when there's so many people who can't have jobs outside of what they can offer, which is, yeah. I'm going to stop. I'm going to go on a whole rant if you don't let me stop.
You sound emotionally exhausted.
Because it is emotionally exhausting.
It is. They never take our opinions into account at all. It really leaves us having other people speak for us all the time in terms of sex workers and our rights, because we basically don't have any. At least not in Canada. Also sounds like it's not also in the Philippines as well, in the States. Yeah. Lots of parallels there. So not so different in that case. But I don't know. Naomi, did you want to speak a little bit about the street sex workers too? Because I know you also do some work with Wish Vancouver, which is a nonprofit. I'm not sure you want to speak a little on that. I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh my gosh, I didn't. Okay. When I think, I don't know, like the word that comes to mind is stupid. Like, I don't know. It's like people work on the street, which is like, I think that everyone should be like have a right to do that. Like a lot of street-based sex workers that I, work with in my other job are Indigenous, and it's like their land that they're working on. And then these cops come and just like park on the side, on the curb or whatever, and scare away potential dates, like for no reason. It's like, why? And then it just like prevents them from providing for themselves or maybe their family. And then you can also like face so much discrimination if the government like finds out that you're a sex worker. They can take away your child, like even if you're like a perfectly adequate parent. It just seems so like stupid and pointless to me. It's like, why are we trying to abolish a way for women to make money by like, I don't know, parking cop cars to like scare away dates? Like, I'm like, that's what the police are like doing with their time. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it actually like dumbfounds me sometimes. Like, I don't know if that really like relates to what we're talking about, but
no, I think it does definitely relate too, because again, the conversation about street sex workers, it's really hard to get their opinion, because obviously all of us, we choose to do our type of sex work. Some of the street and survival workers don't have a choice as well. So that's why I wanted to like loop you in the conversation too, because of your voluntary involvement there with your other work. So
it's just like, whether or not it's like a choice, sometimes it is the best choice. Sometimes you do have a choice and it's the best choice. And sometimes the best choice is working on the street. Like everyone's situation is different. Some people work for themselves to support their families. Like some people just don't have different job opportunities. Some people are like in abusive relationships or like have a pimp that forces them to do it. Some people just do it because they want to, but like there's so many factors that make sex work sometimes the best option for people. And that even includes stripping. Like, if I really wanted to like wait tables or something, like that would be an option for me for sure. But like I would rather just be a sex worker because it works for me for different reasons. Like it clears up my schedule. I get to be an artist. I get to be physical. Like I have like, like mental illness, and it's hard for me to, if I just don't want to come into work, I just don't have to go to work. So there's just so many reasons why people should would do sex work as the best thing.
Right.
That I just think everyone should be allowed access to it if that's what they choose and want, whether or not they're like forced into it by society. Like as long as it's working for them, I think that people should have the right to engage in it.
Right, and have that agency.
Yeah.
Well said. I also wanted to, before we move on, was there anything else that anyone wanted to add to that too, in terms of laws, how it's perceived in North America, how it's perceived in Asia or the Philippines as well, before we move on?
I think like just what people also fail to like understand is that these kinds of laws, which are, meant to contribute to the abolishing of sex work, like these laws are also like really harmful to victims of trafficking, which is the most important thing. Like it's really counterintuitive, because these laws are in place to prevent to abolish sex work and ultimately prevent trafficking, because they're trying to eradicate the market, which is never going to happen. So while they put in these laws, it makes it harder for actual victims of trafficking to contact law enforcement. It makes it harder for them to be heard, because when laws like these are in place to suppress sex work, it drives victims of trafficking further underground. Like the people who handle those who handle those victims of trafficking, like they now have an incentive to be better at hiding, and they do get better at hiding, and it's awful, and it just makes everything worse for everyone, and just it's frustrating. Like,
Very
it's
frustrating.
really frustrating.
Well, that's a good segue actually too, because I actually wanted to dive deeper into the topic of sex work and sex trafficking too, which is obviously very prevalent in the Philippines. Not to say that it's not prevalent in Canada as well, but I guess it's just more visible there, as well as other parts of Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe too.
Yeah.
So yeah, who wants to get started on that topic? It's a heavy one and a frustrating one too.
Yeah.
It's like so depressing, but like, who has the most knowledge on this in terms of, I guess, the population of Filipinos, or who is engaging most in sex trafficking, he would say? There's so many. I don't even know where to start.
Like, I think the focus should be on like making the community, or making the community like easier for people who don't have like a good background to get work that isn't sex work, because a lot of people and a lot of these children are driven into sex work because of economic need, and that's very understandable for a third world country here in the Philippines. So I wish that there was more effort put into like making better communities, so that need to go into sex work earlier than they should and without their consent doesn't exist. I hope
It doesn't exist.
Yeah. So
Gosh, that's awful. It's just
really
a lot.
awful.
It is
Yeah.
awful.
Well, I think it just, I don't know, like there's lots of conversations going on in the world right now in regards to different issues like COVID, police brutality. They're talking about, like, there's lots of discussions here about like defunding the police and investing the funds into community programs, social services, mental health, etc. I think that having, like, it's an ecosystem, like society is an ecosystem. So like Salome was saying, if we eliminate the need to do that by creating healthier societies overall, and it will not force people into those situations. And I think it's actually bigger than sex work. It has to do with like just capitalism in general, and like poverty, and the way we view and care for each other in community with each other.
Right.
Like having support programs put in place for people who need it. That's just like, that's very political, and I know that's my personal opinion, but I just feel like it makes sense, because as we're seeing with COVID and everything, everything that's going on in the world, we are all connected, and we do all affect each other. So one thing, if you implement one program, it will affect people like on another level, if that makes sense, in vulnerable communities especially. I don't know if I'm like articulating myself properly, but that's kind of how I feel.
No, it makes sense. And there's been like
sense.
a huge, yeah, like there's been a huge disconnect too, as you've been seeing in America, obviously stringing from around the world too, I guess sparked with the Black Lives Matter movement. Again, going back to that, just a lot of roots in that. And as you said, with the whole defunding of the police and trying to allocate those services or allocate that funding into different social services, or maybe it's like more psychiatric care, or just sending the correct people out there who are actually trained to deal in emergency situations. Like we need a lot more of that too.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very one note with the police. And again, this is also my personal opinion. I'm with you on that 100%, Naomi. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
And I think too that people always fail to understand that criminality or criminal activity is not the cause for a community to fall apart. It's a byproduct, you know, like it's a symptom. Yeah. So that's, you know, like I feel like people need to understand that first before targeting criminals. You have to think about what made them a criminal, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
how did they get there? What their story is?
Yeah, and you can't really do that with the kind of like police system that we have. Yeah, there you go. So sad.
It is. Everything's depressing now. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's not
like,
depressing. Like I'm fired up, and I'm really happy that I'm really happy that we're just able to be at a point in this world where we can talk about these things and realize these things and think critically about these things. Like I'm happy to also be servicing sex workers on the street level so that I can see these things firsthand and be like, oh, okay, like this is what needs to happen. And you do see the results of different programs, you know, coming and how they're working, etc., and like different solutions and how one thing from one sector like affects another thing. Like it's a very real thing, and I'm just happy that we're able to have these conversations, because at the end of the day you might think like I don't know, like say issues of like drug use or like different things like don't affect us, but then it's like, okay, but I am a stripper and I am a sex worker and I'm a person of color, and you know, like it actually does affect us, and you know, it affects all of us.
100%.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too that, you know, like sex work is like a microcosm of all, because there's so many like marginalized people, marginalized like demographics like intersect with sex work, because like I said, it's the only job that people from a really like really underprivileged background can do. So like you would find that a lot of sex workers are people of color, a lot of sex workers are trans and non-binary. So, you know, we need to talk about these things, because like sex work isn't sex work in itself. It also involves, you know, issues with race and gender and, you know, like, and economic disadvantage and stuff like that. So.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because it's all interconnected. There's so many intersectionalities as well that go hand in hand. There's so many different layers there. So this is why we're here, to unpack it all, or at least attempt to unpack it all in like 2 hours. So there's so much more there. We're trying. We're opening up the discussion, which is, you know, doing our part in that. So hopefully everyone listening can take a bit of that back, right? Naomi, you also brought up something too, which I wanted to kind of bring into the topic that I forgot to write on the itinerary, but I also want to talk about COVID and how sex workers are dealing with COVID, obviously, because it has affected every industry.
I want to know about that too. Like,
I'm not dealing.
Because I'm like cooped up in my room doing the OnlyFans stuff. I don't really know what's going on in the street. Like,
yeah.
Or in the street, okay, well, like literally on the street, people are still doing sex work. They're still doing full service. They're still doing in-person work. I'm also in several like private party groups, and people are still hiring strippers for private parties. People are still hiring escorts for full service. For your bachelor party, whatever, you can have like 2 girls come and do a sex show in person. So that's just still happening. Like, people are not doing it. Also, like where we live in BC, Vancouver, like the cases are just rising. So that's just really scary to think about. At the same time, we have our strip clubs being like targeted by the media and just by people's perceptions. Like a strip club that I've worked at for years, Brandy's, was named by the media as having like a quote unquote outbreak and for skirting the rules, which I don't think is really necessarily fair to say. Also, I think it's just like naming strip clubs in the media is kind of like already marginalizes people because there's already stigma around strip clubs. In reality, like, strip clubs have temperature checks and encourage like people to wear masks and have encouraged social distancing. Like, who can say if it's really perfect? Who can say if people should really be going out at this point? You know, a lot of people would argue like no one should be working, no one should be going to strip clubs. But the fact of the matter is, you're not going to stop sex workers from going and making money. You're not going to keep people from their income if they rely on it. So it just becomes dangerous, because if the strip clubs close down, then what are your options? You have to either go online and do like OnlyFans, ManyVids, etc., or you go physical contact, private parties, street-based sex work, online like ad-based escorting, etc., which is even, you know, arguably riskier. So I don't know.
No. You pretty much put it all in a nutshell. All those points. There's a lot of struggle there. Like, Jolene.
Yes.
Because you started escorting during the pandemic. How was that for you?
Oh my God.
So yeah, I was juggling online hustle, you know, OnlyFans and all, and then I was doing the escorting thing, and so usually, well, the guys I was in contact with were already regulars or folks who met me at the strip club. So I would just usually message exchange with them from an encrypted app, like an encrypted texting app. So that's how I still connect with them. You know. So and what
What's
I usually there's a couple. One of them is Signal. I don't know if you've heard of Signal.
No.
Yeah, anyway, so that's one of them. So every time, like, if they want to meet up, I like, if they text me, I have a burner phone number, and so if they text me there, I like, if they're using the real number, I would just be like, okay, let's transfer our conversation in the Signal app, or you know. So yeah, I think I do it like double, like, safety with having a burner phone, and then the Signal app. And if it's a gut thing too, like, you know, you still have to be able to read people if they're not like psycho, or you know, you could trust them, kind of thing. So a couple of them who I know I could still trust, who won't be like creepy stalkers, I would take them into my apartment. But it's very limited. Like, I only welcome like two guys who I think I could trust. And then a couple times when I, like, if I know, if I have that rapport with them, I'm actually willing to like do an out call with them. Like, it's still a gut thing. I still have to make sure, you know, I'm not gonna get murdered.
No.
So how I'm doing it is pretty dangerous. But then it's anyway, how I kind of did it is, I'm still risking my safety, my, you know, my life. But then because it's just like knowing that I can trust him. And also I usually have like, there's a term for it, like, is it kite string? I don't remember I don't remember the term, but then it's like how, if you're gonna go with a client, you tell a friend of yours in the industry that, hey, I'm gonna go with this client and I'm gonna be in the outskirts of British Columbia. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Can you
buddy
can you like
system.
buddy, it's like a buddy system. So I also follow the buddy system where I would tell like a friend of mine that I'm gonna be out with a client in this time and then to check in with me kind of thing. So
Right.
like, I would tell them like, okay, check in with me on this time, on this day kind of thing, make sure I'm safe kind of thing. Or
Yeah.
if I'm with a client, I tell them like, okay, can you call me so that, I can like let the client know that, oh yeah, like a friend of mine knows that I'm with you. So it's like a sneaky way to let them know that, yeah, somebody else knows. It's not just the two of us. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So a little more filtering there, a little bit.
I'm gonna try to bring us back here to Asia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, since Salome is pretty much online, I'm actually one of the people affected because I did dance at clubs and I was pretty
Yeah.
much always at events
Yeah.
before all of this. Yeah, before all of this. So yeah, COVID hit me and people like me pretty hard. But
Yes.
at the same time, though, I have a feeling that business is still booming. I've been receiving a lot of requests, application forms for sessions now more than ever. And they're like,
Really?
yeah. I guess it's
Wow.
because everyone's all, sex starved and shit.
Yeah, like everyone's like starting to crave that kind of connection with someone, and like
They
at
are.
this
Totally.
point, only sex workers are gonna be able to provide that. Sex
Exactly.
workers and therapists, I guess.
Yes. Sometimes we're both.
Sex
Sometimes
workers are
we're
We're
therapists.
often both.
we're often both. And I think though that in certain pockets, certain pockets of Metro Manila and especially in the provinces, I think that business is booming because I mean only based on my experience, they're even like really hiking up my prices. Come on, I'll double your fee, I'll triple your fee. Just see me right now. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh, you know what? That's really tempting, but the pandemic situation here in the Philippines is shit. There's no
it's
space at
it's
hospitals anymore.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
Like you would see like people, like you would see the
on the
military on
ground.
like
Yeah,
checkpoints.
yeah,
I was gonna
yeah.
take a picture of that because it started again, and like
Oh.
it's so
They're
hard for sex
issuing,
workers to meet people.
yeah,
So
they're issuing like a shoot to kill order, right?
What?
yeah,
Yeah,
Get the fuck
yeah,
out of here. Oh my
yeah.
god.
It's not fucking. It's insane here. It's insane.
Okay, that's another level of
I love
insane.
how
Holy crap.
anything traumatic is said, and people just start laughing. Like we're just like, oh yeah, it's so dangerous. Ha, 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 ha.
That's the real trauma. Yeah. So just don't
so
go
funny.
out. But then again, yeah, business seems to be booming for my sisters here.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
like
well, that's
on
good to hear though.
OnlyFans though, it's so like it's so volatile on OnlyFans. Like it used to, because I started right in the middle of the pandemic, like Jolene. Like I started
Oh.
OnlyFans in May. And like of course I have like my own network of other sex workers who do OnlyFans, who do exclusively OnlyFans like me. And they were saying that, oh, I used to have this many subscribers, but I'm losing like 100 subscribers a day. I used to make $6,000. Now I only make $4,000 a month, and like it's just falling. Because people don't have any expendable income. People can't afford to pay for porn anymore. So
that's one angle of it for sure.
Do you think it's because all of the options are now available online? So the
Yeah, that's
competition
what I
is
think.
driven online.
yeah, and I think too that OnlyFans is getting more and more saturated because like
Yes.
every unemployed girl has started an OnlyFans, you know? Like,
Yes.
Not me.
Don't get me started on this topic.
so yeah,
I
like,
100% agree.
Yeah, so OnlyFans girls are definitely affected as well. Like, you know, like all the other jobs. But it's really good that you know, like people who do in-person sex work are still flourishing. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, like even if I started during the pandemic, and like my other colleagues are telling me, if you had started like just a couple months before, you would have made a killing, but you started at the worst time. You know, like even like even if that is happening, I'm still grateful for what I got. You know, like it's still there. It's struggling, but the industry is struggling, but you know, it's gonna keep on as it always does.
Wild west right now in sexy.
Yeah, like freaking anything can happen.
Yeah. OnlyFans could suddenly shut down. You know, it's.
They've been threatening to. Oh my god.
Yeah. That's like, another topic.
There's so many rumors that, you know, like, hey, since all of the celebrities are on OnlyFans and they're doing safer work stuff, they're slowly pushing out the sex workers. And we kind of feel it because there are like some days where we would get notifications that, hey, your account is temporarily restricted because of something random. And, you know, it's
really?
like that.
Yeah. Like that.
Yeah, like I'm sure like maybe Jolene, like who does fetish stuff, like has experienced this, that if you have like contact with piss or blood or you know, like you get restricted, and that's so anti-sex work, I feel, and they're becoming more and more like that. So
interesting. Yeah. I've never heard of this yet. So like they're only allowing certain types of sex work on the website. This is all new to me.
Yeah.
Like, there's mainstream.
Like OnlyFans, you can't even say the word torture or choke.
Yeah,
or piss.
That's right.
Or, so they're only allowing vanilla sex work. So now.
Mainstream taboo.
I had no idea. Okay, this is new to me. I'm gonna have to learn more about this later. But wow. Okay, this is a lot there. So there's some forms of sex work that are flourishing.
Yeah.
Online stuff has been up and down again. I have to agree with you with the whole oversaturation. I've mentioned this many, many times on the podcast. It's just like an influx of civilian girls joining the site,
not knowing what they're getting into, like
amateurs.
Uncharted territory. Let's talk about it. That's why we're here. Because I have the same frustrations. I feel like there's a lot of civilian girls joining the site, flooding the website, selling pretty much their nudes for like $2, $5, like showing everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, like it's not how I built my fan base at all. And when I get messages from some of my clients be like, oh, well, this girl sold me a video for $15. Why is yours like $75 to $100? I'm like, well. Do I have to explain it to you?
Well, first of all, my resume is a little bit more extensive.
Yeah, I have a lot more content than 30 videos. Yeah, I'm not sure if any of you guys are feeling that same, or you guys are in a similar vein. I mean, that's how it is, at least for me personally, but
I think that everyone that I've talked to uses OnlyFans differently. Because I started my OnlyFans, and it's basically like just, I don't do porn. That's just my personal boundary, like nothing against it. It's just like my pictures, sexy pictures, and sexy dancing, and like my sexy photos. And some people, they'll upload, like they'll just take like all these pictures at once, and then they'll upload like one every day. Some people, they're like posting all fucking day long, like, you know. Some people post like really explicit pornographic content. Some people keep it like pretty PG, and it's just like artfully done, like not even nudes type of, you know, like lingerie boudoir stuff. So it's really interesting to see like how everyone does things differently on that platform and makes it work for them specifically.
Right. There are so many different interpretations of how OnlyFans is used. And it's not saying that one way is better than the other or one way is right. Because it is, as you said, as Naomi said, it's how you use it, also whatever is true to your own branding as well. So we all have to take that with a grain of salt. But I wanted to kind of move over because I just realized, wow, we got only half an hour left. I kind of wanted to move over to the last leg here, if you guys are still listening. In terms of like, it's long. We've been chatting for a long time. It's been great. In terms of like next steps and progress, the education aspect of it as well. Who wants to go into this in terms of like this being an opportunity to educate men, educate civilians, educate everyone, a way to destigmatize the industry?
I can start first. I don't know where it's going, but anyway.
Yeah. It's a big topic. It's broad.
So with being a stripper and an escort, it is definitely an opportunity to educate clientele. And one thing I really like about sex work is that you can go through your own gatekeeping if you want to pursue that. I like potential clients, even in my escort, they have to go through this really hardcore gatekeeping before I would take them in, you know. So I'm very, very picky. So I think within like the short span that I've been an escort, I've had like 50 inquiries and I only took in 3 from you know, and I like that. I like having like that, like being able to decide and choose, like, okay, I like your vibe, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, even in stripping. And like with educating is like, you know, just like reminding them about consent, you know, like
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's
a big
very
one.
it's very important, especially when you're like, when a client wants you to do a duo, so they would want you to get another girl, and then you and the other girl do it basically, like, oh, can I kiss you or can I touch this, and then just making it like obvious to them, and then telling them like, yeah, consent is sexy, you know. That kind of thing.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, so I use that in the stripping industry. And then with like being an escort, for me, because with escort work, at least here in Vancouver, especially if you charge a high rate, like I am, it's an opportunity to connect with guys who are like CEO, who you know, who have power in their company, and then making them aware of, like, you know, because sometimes they hire us because they want to talk to somebody, or, you know, they're not able to get what they need or want from their wife, and we have that similarity of like being willing to take risks, you know, they're taking a risk, you know, hiring you, that kind of thing. So like just implementing like when they come to their business, like being able to implement decisions where it's inclusive to minorities, people of color, kind of thing, being able to inspire them to, you know, be inclusive in their decision making in the big, you know, the big picture, or like their business or whatever. Yeah, you know. And being able to sell time for company, and then like just reminding them that we're also human, you know, we're not a product, we're not like a commodity. We can play as long as there's like respect, and respect of boundaries, respect of like each other's individuality, kind of thing. And you know that the service I'm able to provide is like empathy, human connection, touch. Oh my God, touch, especially with this pandemic. It's just like, like I'm like living on my own right now. So it's just like, fucking touch. I mean, I just like missed it. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going crazy. Another thing about me is I also work I also work as a nanny. So like there was like that 2 week span where it was like quiet for me, no like client and stuff. And then they reach out to me like, hey, can you work for us? I know, it's okay if you don't want. I'm like, oh my God, I need my baby cuddles. Hire me. I don't care. I was like, so part-time. Just, I need you and touch right now. So it actually accentuated the value of like our service, basically, It's just like, so, yeah. So that was
You're
a fascinating
like the
realization.
stereotypical hot nanny.
Yeah.
You're a hot babysitter.
Yeah.
I don't
Do you guys
know.
have any-
I don't really
Sorry.
have it. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, like, I don't honestly really have that much of an interest on like educating people on how to treat people with respect. That's like very personal to me. Like, I would rather people just like come with the knowledge and they're like with it, and then they just like treat me with respect. But I feel like I just end up educating people because of the nature of what I do, although it's not something that I try to do, if that makes sense. Like, I'll just like be myself, and then people are like, oh my God, you're a human, wow. Like, I don't try to be like, oh yeah, sex workers' rights or like whatever. Like, I would rather not if I don't have to. I'd rather people just, hey, like, I read up and I'm going to tip you extra because I realized that you face these certain, obstacles or whatever because of your job. And I'm like, thank you. Like, sometimes I will though. Like, if people come into the club and they're just like not wanting to buy dances, I'm like, hey, just so you know, like, this is a pandemic, and like, if you're not here to spend money, like, you probably shouldn't be here, because like, you should really be supporting the dancers.
100%.
I would just prefer, I feel like compelled sometimes, but I would honestly prefer people just like knew things that they
No, and that's totally validated too, because it's emotionally exhausting to have to educate people on everything in terms of sex workers, what our rights are, what consent is. There's just so many things there. So that's totally okay. You're allowed to feel like that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought someone else was going to say something.
Well, I guess for me, I feel like again, it's like one of the many things that frustrates me about sex work is that there is an opportunity for, with porn in particular, there's an opportunity for porn to teach people what sex is supposed to be and what, like how beautiful a thing sex is. But the people who are in control of the porn industry are not taking advantage of that kind of power to do good and to educate people about what sex really is. Because right now, they are obviously focusing on making profit, and they know that they know that since the audience is very patriarchal and the audience has a lot of internalized misogyny, they know that if they capitalize on that, or they know if they play to that preference, they know that they will make the most money. So you can see, most porn and most content is, like really rough sex, or really like racially charged porn, or really
Yes.
or really just like seeing these like unrealistic like images of womanhood being very, very, very submissive. And like it's like that almost all across the board. And like I feel like people in porn should take the time to educate people into thinking that sex is not something that a woman gives. Sex is a two-way street. Sex is something. Sex is a negotiation between two or more partners. and like people are not people in porn aren't necessarily like aren't necessarily sending that message, but there are some. But in terms of progress, there are some like studios and content creators who do focus on porn that is ethical,
Yes.
and kind of feminist, or kind of like more geared towards sensuality, and so there's a lot of like cuddling, a lot of slow movements, and like with companies like Abby Winters, like the porn their amateur porn actors are getting paid very well, and like consent is consent is like negotiated several times during the process. And you don't
Right.
you don't see that in porn, like with Mia Khalifa coming out saying that she was exploited. Like that happens to so many people in porn and in sex work in general. So I feel like like as sex workers, we do have a responsibility to teach people like what like how beautiful and powerful sex is, and I feel like we should take that opportunity, I feel. So I try to do that with my own work, but obviously I won't try to impose on other sex workers. If like some sex workers are just here to do their job, and that's fine. So but yeah, like
That's
I was
totally
given
fine.
a platform, that's how I'll use it.
Yes.
Fine with that. If I may just hijack.
Yes.
Yeah, in line with that, I guess, with what everyone's been saying, I'm gonna try to flip the table also when it comes to education. I think that we should take the time that we have now to educate ourselves also, most of all, because everything is available now online, and time zones are a freaking social construct. We could all be in the same room, and people are from Vancouver or Italy or or China even. And now is the time for us to learn more about one another and even network, gain more friends in the industry, band together, and because we have similar concerns across the globe,
Totally.
you know. So now is the time for us to come together and open up these discussions, educate ourselves, go to workshops in Paris, okay, at like 3 a.m. because now is the time that we can be connected, even through this festival, right? So
Yes.
Yeah.
the next
Yeah, I
few
think
steps
solidarity like among sex workers is very crucial. Like if we
should happen.
want like concrete changes to how the sex industry is run, we need to listen to each other, and we need to be there for
Yeah,
each other.
yeah, exactly.
100%. Yeah. And again, as Joyen said, this is why the Sugar and Sex Festival exists. Why we're all here today. As you said, because it's such a good opportunity to be able to learn and also to break down these borders, because I love sugar and sex. Me too. Just read a comment here. Sugar and sex, yes. But because there were borders before, there were restrictions before where we couldn't be as connected, right? So
Yeah,
this is and this is why this festival exists too. This is such a good opportunity for all of us to learn. So, and also to educate as well. So I guess lastly for me, this is why I started my podcast, because not only did I think that one statement that my client said that, stripping culture is cool, I kind of just held on to that. And I wanted to know why he thought that, as he was a non-sex worker, kind of looking into this world, I say that quote unquote, I thought it was really interesting, and I felt like there's a lot of stories there. There were a lot of experiences too as sex workers that our stories are not always told, or they're not told in the right capacity, or someone else is always telling our stories for us, making assumptions. Yeah, like what society feeds us, what the media tells us. So I think it was important for me to really shine light on sex workers and what we actually do in our own words, on our own terms. So otherwise it's a kind of like a missed opportunity, I would say, because there's always a lot to learn from all sides, not just from service providers, but also from our clients, people that work with us too. We all work kind of hand in hand. So in order to better understand each other, we really have to ask questions. We really need to have more discussions and conversations like this. So it's kind of great. I mean, there's a silver lining in terms of COVID, in terms of the pandemic, that, you know, it's closed physical borders, but it's also opened up our networks in this way. So, yeah. Spread the love, not the virus.
Love, not the virus.
I guess, yeah, did you guys have any other last minute notes there before we kind of open it up to some questions, if anyone has any other questions or talk points?
I know there were some questions earlier in the chat.
There's so many questions. There's so many good questions. Like,
who wants to go into it? Let me see if whoa, notification 37. Oh my God.
So Martha asked a question here. I actually copy pasted it in my notes, and it says, how do you deal with all the frustration of sex work, social media blocking, police, clients, and do you have emotional support, supervision, coaching, how to optimize your time, expertise, etc., blacklist clients? So with me, I just I got all my social media accounts deactivated just recently.
Yeah, you did.
So I actually had to start all over again, and then I like those friends who I know. At least my Facebook, I still couldn't access it. Weirdly enough, I can still be in touch through Messenger, but I couldn't access my accounts. Anyway, yeah. So just getting friends to help you with like adding you, and then with the police clients, how do you deal with the frustration of sex work, police clients? I don't know with the police part, but with clients, I think I mentioned it earlier on, I make them go through like a gatekeeping I have. So I usually require like a reference. So if, you know, I ask them to give me a contact of a provider that they went to, and then I would email that provider to check in if they're safe and, you know, if they're respectful and stuff, and if they have any warnings regarding them. So I do that. That's one. And then I also require a deposit. So it's either or. So I require a deposit. Like if they're serious, they're gonna give me the deposit. If they're not serious, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. So that's
time wasters.
Yeah.
So many time wasters.
I have to deal with a lot of time wasters. I actually even had a couple guys email me on my provider account, like sending me Bible verses. You know, like Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. Jesus has a plan for you. Yeah, I get a lot of that. And then what I usually tell them is, yeah, you know, Jesus is my homeboy. He's cool, you know. He has like Mary Magdalene on his side, you know, and they're, you know, he's very respectful of her body and gives her autonomy of her body. I like Jesus. I would say something like that. Yeah. So there's that, and then emotional support. With the escort community, I know there's like clumps of little communities that exist. So we basically have like encrypted apps again that we are all part of. Like we all got, it's like I don't know if you guys in the Philippines have it, like the WhatsApp. So we have like an encrypted version of WhatsApp that we all connect to, and so we actually have like blacklists of people, gray lists, and then they tell you, like they provide the name and phone number and why they're gray list or why they're blacklist, what they did, how they violated a provider, kind of thing. So and so we have that, and I'm really grateful to be part of one of this little clump because it's very helpful. And you know, and they also have like rooms in those encrypted programs where they like for mentorship. So if you have questions in relation to the industry, you can just basically ask it, and then the girls will give you recommendations, you know. So just being part of that community is very helpful for me, especially because I'm such a newcomer in this escort
Space.
kind of work, you know.
Totally.
Yeah, and even in stripping, you know, we have like, you know, groups that we're part of. There's like Facebook groups and there's WhatsApp group, and that's also very helpful. So that's how we connect with each other and, you know, help each other out, support each other. And with me, I do seek out coaching. You know, it's always nice to have someone to talk to from a third party perspective. And just because there's so much load too that, you know, I need to unpack, you know, like talking about cultural programming with this coaches, and like having to just express yourself, all the guilt, you know, that religion.
What about you
Catholicism.
guys? Also, like Salome and also Naomi, how do you guys cope with sex work and clients and policing and censorship?
I employ a therapist, and I just wanted to put that out there because I think we, like, a lot of people advocate for like going to therapy, but I just think like as a sex worker, having a sex work friendly therapist that was recommended to me by my friend who's a sex worker just really helped me, because she can kind of like piece together like my life, because she knows all about like my personal life and my working life also, and she doesn't even really advise me, but she kind of like makes things clearer for me. And also my friends. Yay!
Yes.
Supports, but
Just have a good support network.
Yeah. Like Jolene already said about like friends and stuff. So I just want to throw in like my therapist. Oh my gosh. And also I need to recommend this book. Every sex worker read it. It's called Thriving in Sex Work by Lola Davina.
Oh, I love her. I follow her. She's wonderful.
It's so good. It's actually, I experienced it as an audiobook, and it was like it's just an amazing book. It will help you, every sex worker, no matter your gender, no matter like the type of sex work you do, like no matter who you are. It's written to be very inclusive. Like everyone should read or listen to that book. So yeah,
I'm writing that down. Thank you.
I'll DM you again, Naomi.
Salome, how do you cope?
There we go again with laughing with trauma. Like, before I signed on to this panel, like I actually showed Steph a podcast that I did with like DJ Tony and Dr. Rika Cruz. And Dr. Rika Cruz actually is my therapist. She's and yeah, like what Naomi said, it's really important that you find a therapist. Like if you are dealing with mental health issues, it's important that you find a therapist who is sex positive and also sex work positive, because you know, like sometimes those two don't go hand in hand. Like people can be like very sex positive but still be dismissive of sex work.
Totally.
And you know, you would find that all over the medical industry. So yeah, that is very important to me. Like it's important that she knows that the issues that sex workers go through, like issues with like for me, like I have really bad body dysmorphia, and she helps me deal with that because especially when you are in like virtual sex work, you are like bombarded by all of these images of what you are supposed to look like as a sex worker, and it's so honestly so oppressive because I look so different from that ideal. So I need a therapist to cope to help me cope through that. Because like the industry is very like fat phobic, very racist, very, you know, transphobic also. So, you know, it's difficult. But I think the most important thing aside from therapy is that I always need to remind myself that I am in this because I consider sex work as a creative endeavor. And my background is in art. I graduated with a degree in fine art, and you know, I get to, and my I also have like a background in social media, and I get to apply those creative disciplines to my work right now.
Totally.
So when I get frustrated, I always think that, hey, it's always like, as an artist, it's always like a blessing. It's always a joy to be able to create something that people can see, that people can consume, that people can masturbate to. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
that is very
Preach.
fulfilling for me, and I have to keep reminding myself of that.
Great.
So yeah.
Also, there's another question. Just look at the chat too. There's one for Naomi here. You spoke about learning communication strategies and how to relate to people in general, besides in your profession. So can you elaborate a bit more and share some stories, please? Naomi, that's for you.
I don't know if I can really share stories per se, but I will make a few points. First of all, sex work in general, like, taught me about how to assert my boundaries. And I don't really think you need really stories for that, because that's something that, like, I'm learning every day, like, assert my boundaries all the time, like in romantic relationships, with family, even like with my friendships. You know, I find when I'm like, you know, talking to too many strip club patrons, sometimes it can be draining and I get burnt out. So then I have to like be like, hey, like, we can't talk about this. I don't like it when you talk to me like that. And then I apply that to my personal relationships. Also, this is a new one, and this is something that I've discovered from doing my outreach job, working with women on the street. And it's kind of like giving people the space to express themselves and holding space for them to express their negative emotions, or like erratic or frantic emotions. Like, if someone is like, you know, I say something and someone takes it really personal and they want to be rude and clap back, I think a former like baby stripper me would be like, oh, well, screw you, blah, blah, blah. But I think now I'm learning, both in my outreach job and in my sex work job and in personal relationships, to be like, okay, like, they just really need to be angry. Like, they just really need someone to be rude to. And I'm just the person that's there for it. And it's not necessarily good to, you know, you can't hold that space all the time. Like, I don't always have that capacity, but to be able to have like a little buffer zone where you can just detach from things and not take things so fucking personally is really valuable in learning how to just like not react. And so that's like a sex work thing and an outreach thing, and even something that I talk about with like my therapist, my counselor, and even something like on a physiological level I talk about with like my chiropractor, like just having that buffer of like not reacting. So I hope that answers that question. And if we have time, like, people can say their perspective.
Yeah. Who wants to go into that? We got a few minutes left here.
I want to add on to that. Like, with me, before I was a stripper, I felt like I didn't really have any boundaries. And it actually, like, now that Naomi brought that up, I actually, I know my first couple months as a stripper, I did take things personally when clients say like, oh, I don't like your titties are not big enough, or you're too ugly for me, oh, you're, you know.
No!
And I would just like, I was so sensitive when I started. Oh my God, I was so sensitive. I would like cry and leave the club because I'm like, oh, I'm ugly.
I already told you that.
Wait, do strippers regularly experience that? Like,
yeah, constantly.
Oh,
yeah.
All the time.
100%.
You get told you're ugly in your face all the time. And so I actually learned how to put that buffer. I'm glad that, thank you, Naomi, for bringing that up. I learned to not take it personally. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
You
know.
can't. You can't take things personally.
So, the industry did help me learn how to have that buffer, to be more tougher, not take things personally. And I think I'm very grateful for that lesson for me. And then I was able to pass it on with my other, sex work and divorce. So, yeah.
I
Anyone
didn't
else
know
got
that.
things to add?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Now I don't want
People
to
are
be a stripper
shitty.
anymore.
But
I
you
need
do.
baby for that.
Dancing
Asia.
is so fun. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. It's so much fun.
So I don't know. It's different for. We all have like a place where we fit in. That's the beauty of doing sex work is you can do whatever you want, and there's so many options.
Yeah. Did anyone else have anything else to add? Last minute notes here, takeaways? Or I think we're all good. Well,
Thank you
guys,
guys.
it was a blast. I can't believe you made it. Like 2 hours of talking. But again,
It feels like 15 minutes.
I know. And I could probably still keep talking about this. So, but I want to thank the panelists here. So, Salome Salvi. We also have Jolene Salonga, Naomi Weiss. I'll say Joyen too. You really contributed a lot to the conversation. Oh yeah, no, not at all. So, and also another big thank you to Martha Lee, Dr. Martha Lee, for putting on the Sugar and Sex Festival and all the organizers. Thank you again for approaching us to be speaking on the topic of sex work within the Asian lens and being the token Asian. So, hope you guys all enjoyed the discussion and conversation. I guess we'll give a chance to put our handles out there if you want to reach out. Again, I'm Steph Sia Steph, or Strip by Sia, which is my podcast on Instagram. All my links are there. Jolene, you want to go next?
All my links are in allmylinks.com/Pocket Phoenix. I don't know if I can just write it down for everyone to see in here.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'll do that. So it's like pocket and pocket bulsa in Filipino, and then the Firebird Phoenix.
Awesome. Salome?
All across all platforms like ManyVids, OnlyFans. ManyVids, OnlyFans is my girl Pornhub. And I have other platforms. AVN Stars, yes. But most importantly, the OnlyFans. My OnlyFans is Salome Salvi, SalomESalvi. On Instagram, I got suspended, so so my Instagram is salomesalvi.mp4.
Cool.
Yeah.
There we go. Naomi?
I am
Naomi?
on Instagram, Twitter, and OnlyFans as Naomi X Vice. Like a vice, like something bad. All right,
I like how you said that.
That was perfect.
doesn't mean I'm bad.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. This wraps up the Token Asian Talk About Race and Sex Work at the Sugar and Spice Sex Festival 2020. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Writing time.
Sleeping time for us.
You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Dabern.